If you'd like to follow along, this is in Chapter 16 of the Accidental Administrator Linux Server Step-by-Step Configuration Guide. Most of us who administer Linux or Unix systems know that best practice is to have two user accounts for the administrator. One account is used for daily use, and then the root or super user account is used only when needed for administrative purposes. Of course, you could use the switch user su command to work as root, but doing so means that you've probably opened a terminal window and are executing all commands as root, whether root privileges are needed or not. And it can also be easy to forget to exit back to your regular user account, thus exposing your system to potential security issues or, frankly, issues related to human error. An alternative is a tool called Sudo, which is short for switch user do or super user do. Sudo is similar to run as in Windows. It allows you to execute specific commands under root context withoit leaving your regular user profile or context. To use Sudo, you preface the command you wish to run with the word sudo. For example, if you want to run the command ifconfig, you would enter it as sudo ifconfig. If your account is allowed to run that command, it would then execute. Otherwise, you would receive an error. Now let's take a look at what I'm talking about. Suppose that I want to modify a system configuration file that is normally available only to an administrative user or a user with administrative privileges, such as perhaps the DNS client, resolve.conf. If I try to do this logged on as a regular user and notice that the prompt is a $, meaning that I'm logged on just as a regular user, it will actually open up, but it will be read-only. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to type vim, then /etc/resolve.conf, and watch what happens. Notice that it does open, but down at the bottom, notice that it says read-only. And that's because I'm logged on as a regular user. So I'll exit out of the VI text editor with a :q bang. And now what I could do is use sudo to open the file. However, I haven't given myself permission to do that in sudoers yet, so take a look at what happens. I'm going to type sudo and then vim /etc/resolve.conf and watch what happens. It prompts me for my username's password, which I'll enter. And notice that it says Don is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reported. Well, the file that it's talking about is /etc/sudoers, and I need to add myself to that file in order to be able to use sudo. So to do that, I have to switch user. So I'll use su minus. That means I'm going to switch user to root with the root profile and put in the password. Notice that the prompt now changes to a £, meaning that I'm now using the bash shell as a root user, as a super user, and I'm going to use the command vi sudo to open up etc sudoers. Now, you may be thinking, well, gee, why couldn't you just use Emacs or gedit or vi or some text editor to do that? And there are problems with error checking that is not done when you open it up in a regular text editor that is done when you use vi sudo. So we're going to use vi sudo to open up the file, and here is the sudoers file. This is actually /etc/sudoers, and I just happen to know that I need to go to line 89, so I'm going to type 89 Shift G. What you need to know is that you're looking for a line that looks like this, that says root all equals all. And let me explain what that means. First of all, the statement gives root permission to run from any terminal. That's the first all. Acting as any user, the second all, and to execute any command, the third all. Now what we need to do is we need to add Don, the user Don, in the sudoers file. So I'm going to touch the lowercase o, which simply allows me to insert a new line. I'm going to type Don, and then I'm going to tab over. I'm going to type all equals, and then I'm going to type in /usr/bin/vim. You have to use the whole path to the executable in this instance, otherwise it won't work. So I just happen to know where that is. If you have a command that you want to execute, you're not sure where it is, then you can use which or find to locate it. But in this particular case, I just happen to know that that's where vim is located. So I'll touch the escape key and then :WQ to right quit, and now I'll exit, going back to being logged on just as Don, and let's see what happens now when I enter the command sudo vim /etc/resolve.conf. I'll use the up arrow to cycle back to that so I don't have to type the whole thing, and notice that it prompts me for my password. I'll enter it, and notice that I'm in. important, notice down at the bottom, there's no mention of read-only. In other words, I am now able to modify this system configuration file with no restrictions whatsoever. And that's because I was able to execute VIM under a privileged context through the use of sudo. Now, I'll go ahead and exit out. I don't really want to make any changes here, so I'll do :q bang to exit out. Suppose that I wanted to give the user Don the ability to modify any file or to do anything, which might make sense since I'm the administrator, and this is kind of the way things are done in Ubuntu Linux. So what I'll do is I'll once again go back into the privileged user command, su, or privileged user environment, I mean. Then I'll enter the password, and I'll use the vi sudo command once again to modify that file. I'll go to line 90 this time, so it's 90 Shift G, and let's go over, and instead of having Don just use this command, we'll change the line, so C $, and we're just going to type in all equals all. And that will then allow the user Don to execute any command as long as he prefaces it with the modifier sudo. I'll touch escape, then :WQ to right quit, and I'll exit back out. And now Don has permission to execute any command. Doesn't matter which one, as long as he precedes it with the modifier sudo. There are a lot of other options that are available, including the ability to use aliases to group users. If you have a large number of users who are maybe administrative assistants and you want to give them permission to modify certain things, then you can do that. Also, a handy one that I'm not really going to demo for you, but one to mention, is that sudo by default caches your credentials, and if you want to just clear that cache, you can type sudo -K. Of course, if you want to know more information about sudo, you can check the man page, type man sudoers, or simply Google, always a good source, on sudo or sudoers or vi sudo. I hope that's been helpful for you. Thanks for watching.